What's going on, gardeners? It's Saturday, November 27th, and today I'm going to show you what's possibly the easiest and most revolutionary way to harvest and cure your sweet potatoes. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. One of the easiest crops to grow down here in the southeast is sweet potatoes. They're basically impervious to diseases. They have almost no pests and they thrive in heat and humidity and heavy rainfall. And normally I harvest my sweet potatoes before my first frost, but this year I wanted to push things as hard as I could, and I let them get frosted on, and they actually endured 3 different freezes. So all of the vines are burnt back. And I let them in ground as long as possible because sweet potatoes are a root or a tuber, and they grow larger the longer you let them in. But now that the vines are killed off, there's no point in keeping them any longer. They can only get destroyed by deeper, harder freezes. Now I have 2 varieties of sweet potatoes here. I have the Beauregard sweet potato, which is a traditional southern orange sweet potato, and the Murasaki sweet potato, which is a purple Japanese type. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all of these vines off so I can actually get to the sweet potato tubers. And I'm not going to throw these vines away. I'm actually going to take them and I'm going to place them in a wheelbarrow because I'm going to relocate them to my driveway pad, and then I'm going to run my lawnmower over them and chop them up into the lawnmower bag, and then I'm going to take those mulch clippings and I'm going to dump them back on top of this bed because they make fantastic mulch and a good ground cover that will break down all season long. Now that we've removed all of the sweet potato vines, we're going to dig down and feel around and try to find all of the sweet potato tubers. And I recommend putting on gloves and using your hands for these because the tactile feel of your hands are really going to help you locate everything, because there's going to be a tremendous number of tubers buried under here. So if I simply do some digging, these roots are serious. So over here I have the purple Murasaki Japanese sweet potatoes, and then on this side over here I have the more traditional southern Beauregard sweet potatoes. Look at that cluster of sweet potatoes right there. This must be probably 4 or 5 pounds of sweet potatoes just on its own. So now I'm going to go through and pull all of these out of the bed. And here we have our sweet potato harvest. We have the orange Beauregard sweet potatoes right here, and then we have the purple Japanese Murasaki sweet potatoes right here. And the first thing that you'll notice is the orange sweet potatoes are much more prolific than the purple sweet potatoes. And that is true. You get better yields out of these orange Beauregard sweet potatoes, but what you don't get in yields from the Japanese variety, it makes up tenfold in flavor, because in my opinion, they just blow away an orange sweet potato in terms of taste. That's my personal taste preference. Now let's look at the size. The purple sweet potatoes are more uniform and they are almost perfect when it comes to shape for the most part. Really happy with the shape. The orange Beauregards on the other hand, the shape isn't quite as nice. They're a little bit more lumpy and bumpy and non-uniform. Overall, I'm really happy with the yields that I got out of this bed. The problem is the size just isn't up to par. So next year, I'm going to give my sweet potatoes a lot more fertilizer, namely some triple phosphate to help really boost that root size, because it's clear to me that I probably underfed my sweet potatoes. Now, one thing that you will notice about my sweet potato bed is that it is just full of sweet potato roots. They are just all over the place. Everywhere you dig, you find these sweet potato roots. And this is precisely why I've told you in the past, sweet potatoes are one of the few plants that you should never rotate in your garden. That is because they are extremely, extremely invasive. Once you plant sweet potatoes in a spot in your garden, all of these roots that are underneath your frost line are going to survive the winter, and then when the soil temperatures start warming back up in the spring, they're going to come to life again and they are going to start regenerating. So wherever you plant sweet potatoes, even if you don't plant sweet potatoes in the following years, you will keep having sweet potatoes spring back up year after year after year, and the roots are going to take over the area. So if you have a garden and you plant sweet potatoes in different locations, they're going to spread like wildfire throughout your garden and take it over. So I strongly recommend dedicating a specific raised bed to sweet potatoes and never growing anything else but sweet potatoes in that location. And if you have a small garden, grow them isolated in containers because they will eventually take over your entire garden. You don't have to worry about pests and disease because sweet potatoes are extremely resistant to pests and disease, so they can be grown in the same location over and over again and do great. This right here is just a massive ball of sweet potato roots that I was able to pull out of my bed. I'm going to let them sit and dry out in the sun on top of this weed barrier and get hit by a few more freezes to kill them all off. In the meantime, I'm then going to take a rake and I'm going to rake my raised bed nice and even again, and then I'm going to dump all of the mulch that I made out of the sweet potato vines all over the raised bed, and then I'm going to let those sweet potato vines decompose throughout the winter. Growing and harvesting sweet potatoes is an incredibly easy process, but despite how easy that process is, the next step is what keeps so many gardeners from actually growing sweet potatoes, and that is the curing process. After you harvest your sweet potatoes, you need to cure them in a two-step process, and when they are properly cured, not only will they taste better, because right now they're very starchy, we need to cure them just so the starches convert into sugars so they taste good, but we also need to cure them so they store for a very long time. And when properly cured, sweet potatoes can store for months. Now, as I mentioned, sweet potatoes have a two-step curing process. The first step is the high heat, high humidity curing process, where you need to store your sweet potatoes at about 85 degrees Fahrenheit and 90% humidity for 4 to 14 days. I've personally found that about 7 days is perfect. 7 to 10 days is really probably somewhere with the ideal amount of time. The second process is the cold cure process, where you store them at 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 to 8 weeks. Since we're in November, it's really easy to accomplish the cool curing process because pretty much everybody's garage or basement right now is at that perfect 55 to 60 degree Fahrenheit temperature range pretty much everywhere in the United States, outside of a few areas that are super far north or super far south. So it's usually not a big deal to do the cool curing process. The difficult part that a lot of people avoid or skip altogether, which you shouldn't do because this is what really makes your sweet potatoes taste good, is the hot, humid curing process. Because we're in November, it is very difficult to find a place that is constantly 85 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity. And I've seen a lot of people annex entire rooms of their house where they'll wall off a room, shut the door, put in a space heater, and then put in a humidifier and crank the humidifier and the space heater for however long to actually create a hot room to cure all the sweet potatoes. But who wants a room in the house that you can never go in? And that's pretty brutal on the electric bill. So last year, I showed you a method of doing this in your oven. You can simply take your oven and place your sweet potatoes in there and throw in a simple 40-watt strand of incandescent Christmas lights and a loaf pan full of water, and then you can create your own humidity chamber and just lightly vent the oven. And doing that, you can establish the perfect conditions for the warm curing period. Now, if you don't use your oven a lot and this sounds convenient for you, I will link to that video above because it creates the perfect conditions. However, if you're like me and you like cooking a lot, you may not want to give up your oven for an entire week, up to 2 weeks, for you to do this warm curing process. Now, here on my channel, I'm always trying to build a better mousetrap, and that is what I think I've done here. I think I've come up with the greatest, most convenient way to cure your sweet potatoes. And to do that, all I'm going to use is one of these 105 quart, 99 liter clear Sterilite containers. They're about $10 at Walmart. All of my sweet potatoes are stored in this container. Then I'm going to take one of these 64 ounce, half a gallon mason jars and fill this up with water. I'm going to put that in the center of the container. Then I'm going to use one of these 20-inch by 48-inch heat mats that are used for starting seedlings, and a thermostat, which is used to thermostatically control a heat mat for your seedlings. And these are only like $15 on Amazon. I have all of these items linked in my Amazon storefront. A heat mat and a thermostat will only cost you about 40 bucks, and you'll be able to use them all winter long to start all of your seeds. So simply by adding water to this container and this heat mat, I'm going to create a perfect humidity chamber, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So I'm up in my office on a carpeted floor, and I have the heat mat down on the carpeted floor with the large clear container with the full 64 ounces of water in the center, and that water is going to provide the humidity. Now the reason why I'm using carpet is I need to bring the temperature inside of that container up to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And the way these heat mats work is if you need a high temperature, you have to place them on carpet. If you need a low temperature, you need to place them on a hard surface. And that is because hardwood floors or concrete floors or vinyl floors tend to be very cool this time of year, and they will absorb the heat and spread it out over the floor. So a heat mat struggles to get very warm on a solid surface. On a carpeted surface, only that area absorbs the heat. So carpeted floors tend to build heat very quickly. So your heat mat will get hot on the carpet. And this is precisely why you need to use one of these thermostats. You will not be successful if you do not use one of these thermostats, because it will get far too hot in there if you just let the heat mat go on its own. And setting this up couldn't be any easier. This is the thermostat right here. So all you do is you take your heat mat and you plug it in to the thermostat like that. Then you plug your heat mat or your thermostat into the outlet. And then right now it's defaulting, right now the temperature, which is this probe right here up in my office. You can see it is 72.1 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to hit set, and I'm going to turn this up to 85 degrees because that is the temperature that we need. And then this thermostat is going to stay on until this temperature probe reaches 85 degrees. So I'm going to take this probe and I'm going to drop it right inside of this container. And when it gets up to 85 degrees, this thermostat is going to kick the heat mat off. When it drops below 85 degrees by more than a degree or two, the thermostat is going to kick back on and it is going to warm up the chamber again. So this is a no-brainer way to keep the sweet potatoes at about exactly 85 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take a degree or so. Just make absolute sure that you are doing this in an area that gets absolutely no sun, because if the sun gets in there, it can make things far too hot. And the last thing that we're going to do is put this clear lid on there, but we're going to put it on so it's cocked to the side ever so slightly, because we don't want this to be completely sealed. We need a little bit of fresh air to get in there. If you let it seal completely and you don't let any fresh air in there, you could create a rot-producing environment. So you need to be able to vent some of that humidity. I'm just going to let the heat mat do its thing. It's going to warm up the bottom. The thermostat is going to keep things exactly at 85 degrees. You can see right now it's only at 62.9, and that's because the temperature probe is actually contacting the sweet potatoes and they're very chilly from being underground. We are 5 days into the warm, high humidity curing process, and I couldn't be more thrilled with how things are going. The thermostat has been holding practically perfectly in the mid-80s, exactly where I want it to be. And the plastic container is doing great with the humidity. As you can see, there's this ever so slight film of humidity on the lid underside, and if I lift this lid off, you can also see that the mason jar that held the water, it's slowly starting to deplete. And that's because the water is slowly evaporating and releasing humidity into the air just as designed. So everything seems to be working perfectly, and the sweet potatoes look absolutely fantastic in there. So I'm going to let this go for probably about 7 to 10 days. So another anywhere from 3 to 5 days more should get me exactly to where I want to be. It's 10 days later, and my sweet potatoes have completed the warm curing process up in my office. Everything went perfectly. Now I moved them down into my garage where it is a perfect 55 degrees Fahrenheit. These sweet potatoes will remain here in the bin for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm going to leave the lid on but slightly askew because I want it to stay cool and dry in there, but I want to keep any insects from getting in that may be trying to overwinter inside my garage. The reason why we're doing the 6 to 8 week cool cure process is it generally makes the sweet potatoes even sweeter, and they will store better when cured in a cool, dry area. However, if you wish, you can take one of the sweet potatoes and you can bring them inside and bake them in your oven. And if you find they're sweet enough, you can use them all right now if you wish. However, if you find that they aren't sweet enough, they can get sweeter over time when you let them cool in this low humidity, cool, dry climate. And that right there is what I believe to be a revolutionary new way for curing sweet potatoes that will save you a ton of time, a ton of space, and a ton of energy. So if you found this video helpful, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we upload more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products I use in my garden, they're all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the Amazon storefront link. Also, while you're there, check out my Spreadshop link for custom-made merch if you'd like to support the channel. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Good morning, sunshine. Did you have a good night's sleep? Look at you in your handsome PJs. You ready to go potty? You ready to go potty, Dale? Come on, let's go outside. Let's go potty. Oh, it was cold out last night. Look, it's all frosty, buddy. There's frost all over the ground. Your foots are going to be cold. Your foots are going to be cold. Go quick, buddy, so you can come back in and warm up.